Lisa on Ice, the episode in which Lisa is forced to enter into an extracurricular sport to prevent a failing grade in gym. And it turns out that the sport that suits her just happens to be the one that Bart is currently invested in, the notoriously aggressive and dangerous ice hockey, and it features one of the show's most heartfelt and beautiful moments. Throughout the episode, the children are subjected to a particularly relentless effort from Homer to imbue them with competitive spirit, but it's not just the rivalry between Bart and Lisa that encompasses the episode's themes of competition, its toxicity and aggression. Marge and Homer's styles of parenting conflict strongly throughout the episode. Lisa's unhealthy tendency toward perfectionism and overachievement is explored before she even settles into ice hockey, and the question of gender and its unfortunate stereotypes, implications for sport culture, and even the mental health of the individual is also addressed, serving as a kind of backdrop throughout the episode.
Girls should stick to girl sports.
I think women should be able to play any sport men play.
To think of all the time I wasted on you. Well, not wasted. I love you.
It's a smart, thematically rich and consistent, well-crafted episode. In fact, it has enough material that it consequently lacks the usually more prominent B-plot. Tension slowly builds, and the siblings enter into an elevated phase of resentment before it's announced, with manipulative glee from Homer, that their teams will be playing off against one another. So the moment of reckoning arrives, the climax to meet all this tension and conflict, a tiebreaker scenario with the two most important players being our competing siblings. Even Marge has joined in on the excitement at this point, suitably completing the impression that the only possible outcome in this feud is the following through of it all.
A penalty shot with only 4 seconds left. It's your child versus mine. The winner will be showered with praise. The loser will be taunted and booed until my throat is sore.
The music ramps up with those signature Simpsons horns and drums, all creating a kind of melodramatic and light-hearted suspense, but a definite suspense nonetheless. Bart careens down the pitch in preparation for the deciding shot, during which he glances, notably timidly, to his right to see the crowd practically chanting for blood. Lisa looks in the same direction. And we therefore see exactly what they see. Homer, Marge, and Maggie among the crowd all fallen prey to the mania, and we're provided with a close-up on Maggie, a source of humour and cuteness, but more crucially, information, which consists of two major elements. One is of a thematic and narrative interest. One of the few characters we typically assume innocence of and immunity from all this chaos has unfortunately most definitely become susceptible to it, leading the audience to ask where the hope could possibly be for any cordiality and compromise and collaboration and forgiveness and peace at this point. The other is a cinematic means of inference, as it's not until straight after that very close-up, when we see each sibling turn back to their adversary, that the montage depicting their simultaneous moment of clarity and realization happens. This has the effect of suggesting that it's the sight of Maggie's investment in the feud in particular that incites Bart and Lisa's anagnorisis. It acts as a reminder of their own days of infancy, when the two helped each other retrieve cookies from the counter, when they, at an age much closer to that of Maggie's, were at contrastingly loving peace. And 3 other memories follow, continuously interspersed with slow zoom-ins on their mortified faces, and their surroundings are swallowed by shadow to imply all-encompassing and fully engaged deep dives into memory, all of which is punctuated by a foreboding drumbeat, giving a sense of final reckoning and judgment, in turn suggesting that the only outcome that really matters is that of the pressure on their conscience. And it's beautiful. It would have been fairly easy to insert wholesome scenes between the two from previous episodes in order to demonstrate this. There had been plenty of them after all. Instead, new interactions, which notably feel like our own memories of the show's past and in a small way our very own past, are inserted. It was important to portray very particular things in accordance with the emotional premise of the episode, what exactly it is that Bart and Lisa have to realise. Each depicted memory demonstrates the two engaged in human acts of collaboration, play, compassion, and selflessness. No dialogue, just the grunts, mumbles, whimpers, and laughter of 2 young children, which enhances our sense of their purity. All of this is accompanied by a simultaneously somber and more affectionate rendition of the theme tune. There's no mischief, chaos, or frantic business of 20th century suburban life here. Instead, it becomes solely one of the things it previously was only in part, an expression of the extraordinary happenstances and value of the institution of the modern nuclear family, its flaws and triumphs, its conflicts and fundamental capacity for togetherness and communion. The main melody develops in character as the sequence progresses. It goes from the appropriate and more familiar whimsy of the flutes, then to the solemn minor piano chords, indicating perhaps what is at stake through the protraction of this psychologically violent rivalry, then to the more earnest and drawn-out yawns of what I think is an oboe, a grand instrument for the expression of a grand sentiment. When things are bad for one of you, they're bad for both of you. And if it's in your power to amend that, it's your moral and spiritual duty to, befitting of the challenge to be overcome, the pressure from outside influence to engage fully in conflict. Each memory depicts them as physically isolated from any parental influence. Homer and Marge aren't necessarily not there, but their absence from these particular memories is a significant component of the power of Bart and Lisa's realization. At the moment when the family can no longer be relied on for the practice of compassion and care, Lisa and Bart remember times when they collaborated in the spirit of those qualities at points when their parents similarly weren't immediately available. That's what they recognize. The two of them are essentially on their own again, this time with an opportunity to be bigger people. If it takes their parents to inspire rivalry, it definitely takes only the two of them to inspire love. And so too do they recognise that the feud that they are engaged in is an affront to the behaviour that they know they're capable of, when they had no one else to either morally guide them or aid them in pursuit of their goals. And thus those memories gain greater meaning for the both of them, meaning they perhaps didn't consider beforehand. And therein lies the true prize. And sacrificing the game for a draw is thus symbolic of not only the bond of siblings, but all that that love implies, the power of fairness, civility, and the amicable sharing of lived experience. In this moment, the episode becomes something more than a satire of popular culture and its attitude towards sport and gender, and of popular depictions of sporting rivalries. It becomes a touching and pitch-perfect meditation on the humanity inherent in one of the world's favourite animated families. We're invited to reflect on what is fundamental about these two siblings from our own perspective of the show. Whether you watched it at initial broadcast or with the benefit of 29 other seasons, these two make a far better team than they do a set of rivals. And through the sacrifices their parents have made for them, Homer's relinquishment of a more fulfilling vocation, the traumatic degradation of Marge's individuality and spirit, they are likely to surpass them in all worthwhile moral qualities.